Hello, I hope you are all keeping well these days. Today is already August the 16th, and it's already the middle of August, and pretty soon you will all be going back to school. So I hope that when you go back to school, things will be fine, especially considering this COVID-19 situation, that you will all be safe and healthy for your new school year. So for today, I'll be sharing with you again the same topic that I started last month, which is from the book, what is the book of Job telling us about the book of Genesis. But first of all, let's ask our brother Alvin to read the Bible scripture for us. Let's turn to our Bible. We'll be reading Job, a few passages from 38, 39, and then 40, 41.
Today's scripture comes from Job chapter 38, verse 36 to 41. Who gives the ibis wisdom or gives the rooster understanding? Do you hunt the prey for the lioness and satisfy the hunger of the lions? When they crouch in their dens or lie in wait in a thicket? Who provides food for the raven when its young cry out to God and wander about for lack of food? Job chapter 39, verse 1 to 2. Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you watch when the doe bears her fawn? Do you count the months till they bear? Do you know the time they give birth? Job chapter 39, verse 5. Who let the wild donkey go free? Who untied its ropes? Job chapter 39, verse 9. Will the wild ox consent to serve you? Will it stay by your manger at night? Job chapter 39, verse 13. The wings of the ostrich flap joyfully, though they cannot compare with the wings and feathers of the stork. Job chapter 39, verse 18 to 20. Yet when she spreads her feathers to run, she laughs at horse and rider. Do you give the horse its strength, or clothe its neck with a flowing mane? Do you make it leap like a locust, striking terror with its proud snorting? Job chapter 39, verse 26 to 29. Does the hawk take flight by your wisdom and spread its wings towards the south? Does the eagle soar at your command and build its nest on high? It dwells on a cliff and stays there at night. A rocky crag is its stronghold. From there it looks for food, its eyes detect it from afar. Job chapter 40, verse 15 to 19. Look at Behemoth, which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. What strength it has in its loins, what power in the muscle of its belly. Its tail sways like a cedar, the sinews of its thighs are close knit. Its bones are tubes of bronze, its limbs like rods of iron. It ranks first among the works of God, yet its maker can approach it with his sword. Job chapter 41, verse 1 to 2. Can you pull in Leviathan with a fish hook or tie down its tongue with a rope? Can you put a cord through its nose or pierce its jaw with a hook? Job chapter 41, verse 18 to 21. Its snorting throws out flashes of light, its eyes are like rays of dawn. Flames stream from its mouth, sparks of fire shoot out. Smokes pour from its nostrils as from a boiling pot over burning reeds. Its breath sets coals ablaze and flames dart from its mouth.
From the Bible scripture reading that we just heard, you would realize that it is a long list of creations or creatures that God had created, and God took great length to describe them, and we will be looking at the passages to see why, or why is it important. So we were last time we were looking at the God's creation from day 1 to day 4, and we are only mainly talking about those God's creations in the sky. And we also talk about the few names that was mentioned in the book of Job related to the stars, constellations, and God have named them. So last time we were looking at day 1 to day 4, and of course in day 1 God said, let there be light. then we see that light is not only the source of light allowing us to see, but it is also the source of power and energy. And then God separated, let there be a sky separating the water from above and below, and then they gather in one place, and then dry ground appears. Then we have our globe. And God said, let land produce vegetation, bear seeds and fruits. And then God created the two great lights, the sun to govern the day and the moon to govern the night. And every time when we see the sun, then it's a new day. And just like the moon, every time when we see a new moon and then it disappears, a month has gone by. And of course, we also know that in addition to rotating, the Earth is also orbiting around the sun, and for one round that we go around the sun, it would be a year. So I was also mentioning that the Jewish calendar also have the same calendar as the Chinese calendar. We are both using the month of the moon, and therefore we are using lunar calendar. And then we know that God created all the stars, and we also know that the stars closest to Earth are the planets in our solar system. So see how beautiful God has created all these planets. And of course, if we look up the sky, we will also see a lot of beautiful stars, especially when studying them under a telescope. So these are all the planets that God had created. And in the Bible, both in Psalm and also in Job and also in Genesis, it told us that God had created the stars and God has been naming them. And why did God name them? I think God actually taught us to recognize them so that we know the time of the year, because the constellations are created so that we can recognize the different seasons and months. And therefore I was saying last time, I was talking about the constellations, and God had created constellation. And I was also reminding everyone that make sure you do not think that God created constellations so that we can believe in the horoscope and be superstitious, but they are mainly for telling us the seasons. So it's not for the horoscope. And after day 4, today we'll be talking about day 5 and 6. Day 5, God created creatures of the sea and the birds, but please pay attention to all these descriptions, all according to their kinds. God also created the living creature, wild animals, and livestock, and all creatures that moves around along the ground. And it is in day 6, and again, God created them according to their kinds. So we'll talk a little bit more about their kinds later. So of course, on day 6, God created also mankind in His own image. So if you are not yet familiar with the book of Job, I will just need to quickly tell you a little bit. So mainly, the book is talking about this person, Job, who suffered a lot, and then his friends are making up reasons what they think. The reasons are that God punished him. It must be he had done something bad and so on. And then Job was also asking God. So God had answered Job by talking to him in the storm. And God had named a lot of creations and telling him that there are a lot of things that he had done, God had done, that man cannot understand and cannot comprehend. So therefore, let's start from Job 38. The Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. And then when it starts, this is something that we read last time. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me. So God was talking to Job, and then God talks a lot about the things in the sky, the stars, and also on the earth, regarding seas and clouds and the atmosphere and the morning and dawn and the earth, how it took shape. And then God talked about light and darkness and snow and hail and lightning and winds and rain and thunderstorm and dew and ice. And then the stars, the Pleiades, Orion, or the constellations, and the bear, which is the Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, and his cups. And then clouds and lightnings. So God talked about a lot of these and asking Job, would you be able to comprehend? And then this is where our Bible scripture reading starts today. Here it says, who gives the ibis wisdom, or gives the rooster understanding? Of course, you all know that the rooster will be making the crowing sound in the morning, and that is the understanding or wisdom that God had given the rooster. But what is a ibis? Do you know? Yes, so this is an image of the ibis. But why would God said he had given the ibis wisdom? Actually, this bird is very important back in those days, because like one of the river in China or in other parts of the world, the river quite often flood and overflow, and this ibis is the bird that come to this area of the river Nile before the flood comes. So when people see that this bird is coming, they will know that a flood will be coming, and then they will prepare themselves, maybe go to higher grounds so that they will not be harmed. So these days, quite often we also see flooding in certain parts of the world, also recently in China, Europe, and the US. Wouldn't it be nice if we also have this bird coming before the flood to warn us so that we can avoid damages? So after mentioning about the ibis and rooster, God also talked about the lioness and lions. What is special about it? So I was also looking up on the internet, and in one of the websites it actually clearly says male lions are primarily responsible for the security of their pride. So they don't really hunt. They probably will wait there and patrol and wait for the female lions, the lioness, to hunt and bring back food. As I said, the lioness are primarily responsible for hunting, and this is something special, and I guess this is why God was mentioning about them. And here you see a picture of the female lion hunting a warthog. And then God mentioned about the raven. So the raven is a very smart bird, but here start talking about the young ones. So the raven, like a lot of other birds, will be feeding the younger ones, because the young ones will not be able to find food themselves, and therefore God has provided them. And in the passages afterwards, we will see that God mentioned more about the young ones. So we were also reading Job 39 verse 1. Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you watch when the doe bears her fawn? So you know the doe is the female deer. If you know the song Doe, a deer, a female deer, ray, a drop of golden sun. So maybe you're too young to know this song from the Sound of Music. But anyway, a doe is a female deer. And what's special about them? And why did God mention about their giving birth? Because for the mountain goats, They were born in the hillside or in the cliff or up high in the mountain, and usually it would be in difficult or dangerous situation. So therefore God actually made these small mountain goats to be able to stand up in a few minutes and start walking, not like the baby birds that they would be waiting there in the nest waiting for their parents to feed them. But these small mountain goats will be able to walk around in a matter of minutes. And then both the mountain goats and the deer were born mainly near the end of May and the beginning of June. That's why God mentioned about the timing of their giving birth. For human, I'm sure you all know you have friends with birthday throughout the year. But if you ask a deer or a mountain goat, ask them their birth date, it will mainly be around the middle of May or beginning of June. Why? Because these two animals are not equipped to protect themselves and they cannot run too fast. So if they are wild animals chasing after them, some will be killed and die. So God have a special plan for them and make sure that when some baby were born, there were a lot of babies being born. And so that there are more babies than the wild animals can kill, and therefore a large group of the babies can survive and then grow bigger and can reproduce. So this is God's special plan in protecting these animals. And that's why God also mentioned about the time that they are giving birth. And God is also mentioning about the wild donkey and also the wild ox. So God gave them a special place that they will be living, their habitat. But God is also saying that I have made them each according to their kind, and some of them are wild. You can never tame them or catch them, but some you can tame them and can help you. So we know that there are donkeys and ox, and then there are also wild donkeys and wild ox. And talking about the according to their kinds, we already saw that the birds, they know how to feed their young ones, and how all the animals are different, and God had created them differently. And then ostrich, this part is also a part that I like really a lot, but it is only after I study more about ostrich to understand this passage. Here in verse 17, God said that God did not endow her with wisdom. So why? Why do you think God said that? Maybe what comes to your mind is a picture that the ostrich is sticking their head under the sand when being chased by enemy, so they pretend they cannot see, and then they thought that they are safe. No, so actually this is not true. However, they are sticking their head so low because of what is mentioned on verse 14. So she lay her eggs on the ground and let them warm in the sand. But why is it not wise to do that? Because a foot can crush them, and some wild animal may trample them. So this is something that is unwise, but however, God allows them to do it that way. But then it also talks about their wings in verse 13. So their wings are so small and cannot compare to any wings of the real birds. So what are they for? That is also something quite interesting. First of all, God actually mentioned that they laugh at horses and riders. Why? Because they can actually run faster. If you check on the internet, you will also find that ostrich runs faster than horses. And I can show you this short video. This should be coming up soon. That shows how fast an ostrich runs. Yeah, although at the beginning it is quite slow. And then pay attention to its wings, and then you will understand the purpose of their wings. It is not for flying, but actually for stopping, almost like a parachute for a race car, and to help them turn. So it's almost like a sail that directs them as they run, because they are running so fast. I find it so amazing that God created ostrich in such a special way. And of course, God also talked about horse and their strength and how much it can leap. It can jump like a locust. And here I'm showing you a picture of the locust jumping or leaping. And it also talks about in verse 20, a horse snorting. And I hope you can hear the sound of the snorting. Yeah. And then God talks about the hawk and eagle and how they fly high. As we all know, the eagles were mentioned in the Bible quite a few times. And because a lot of people know that the eagles can fly really, really high. And another thing special about them is their eyes. Their eyes can see really, really far. And God also particularly mentioned them in verse 29. Its eyes detect it from afar. So the eagle has such good eyesight that they can see 3 to 4 times farther than a human can. And they can spot a rabbit running even 3 miles away. So that is how far their eyes are. And their eyes are created really specially because each eye has 2 focal points. The eye can see ahead and also 45 degrees to the side. So they can see the surrounding easier, even though their eyes cannot move around like our eyeball. And then God was asking, so, will you understand all these? Will the one who contends with the mighty correct him? Let him who accuses God answer him. So, whoever wants to accuse God, we need to understand that we are not worthy, just like how Job had answered. And then again, God continued to speak to Job to explain more things about his creation to Job. So verse 6, then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm again. And this two, so we, from verse 8 to 14, I'm not going to spend too much time, but we were reading verse 15 earlier. Look at the behemoth, which I made along with you. So God made the behemoth along when he made all the creatures on day 6 along with you, because humans were also made on day 6, and which feeds on grass like an ox. So probably you wouldn't know what a behemoth is, and I think the translator who translated the Chinese Bible didn't know what a behemoth is, and they have translated it as a hippopotamus. So do you think it's correct? Because verse 16 continues to say that what strength it has and power it has in its muscle. And verse 17, its tail swings like a cedar. So in the other picture, you probably see the tail, the tiny tail of a hippopotamus. So there's no way that the behemoth is the hippo. So the other big animal that we know would be the elephant, which is quite strong and powerful, but still its tail is not like a cedar, because you know the cedar is a tree, a tall tree, so whose tail would be like a cedar? So I think it would be something like this. Yes, so I'm going to talk about dinosaurs. Let's continue. Verse 18, its bones are tubes of bronze and its limbs like rods of iron. and they rank first among the work of God. But remember, this is God speaking himself, and it ranks first among all his creation. So this behemoth must be something great, and yet it is only God who can approach it, because if you look at this image, the human being so small, a human cannot approach such a gigantic dinosaur, because it would be quite dangerous. And the hills brings it to its produce, and all the wild animals play nearby, because some of the dinosaurs, as we know, do not kill other animals, and so therefore other animals can still play around them. And even when raging river comes, they are not alarmed, because they are secure, because they are so big. So can anyone capture it by the eye, or trap it, or pierce its nose? So with all these descriptions, I really think that this word behemoth, God is referring to the dinosaurs. And of course, we know that dinosaurs exist because we are able to see their bones. And then the next creature that God mentioned is the Leviathan. So here in Job chapter 41 verse 1, God said, "Can you pull in Leviathan with a fish hook, or tie down its tongue on a rope?" So again, the Chinese translation, they don't know, nobody knows what the Leviathan is, and they translated it as the crocodile. So that's why I'm showing the picture of the crocodile. But let's study the Bible scripture and see whether the Leviathan is actually a crocodile or some other animal or some other creature. So verse 5, can you make it a pet and put it on a leash? Or can trader barter for it, meaning trade them, sell them and buy them? So again, it is God talking about this creature. So if this is true, if the pictures here are true, people are already making the crocodile into pet, then God is lying. So definitely, God is not talking about the crocodile or alligator. And so here it talks about how strong it is. It cannot be hurt by harpoons or spears, and no one can subdue it. Verse 9, any hope of subduing it is false. So God then said, so who is able to stand against me? And how can anyone claim anything from me or complain before me? Do you understand anything? So many things you cannot understand. But regarding this Leviathan, God did not stop here. God actually continues to describe it because it's so special. So God talks about the limbs of the Leviathan, its strength and its graceful form, and no one can strip off its outer coat because it has double coat of armor. Who dares open the door of the mouth or rings about with fearsome teeth? So talking about the double coat of armor, I want you to think of some creature that maybe we know that has two coats of skin or armor, although that is not so strong. So can you think of something? It is something that you probably eat very often. Fish. Because fish has an outer armor of scale, and then after you take off the scale, it still has its separate skin, right? So keep this in mind, because that will help us to understand what is a Leviathan. So it says, can anyone take off their coat? if it is a alligator or crocodile, someone can. So that's why it is not a crocodile. And people can even try to put their head in between the jaws. So definitely, Leviathan are not crocodiles or alligator. And then it talks about the rows of shields. And I'm sure you can guess what this picture is. It is the fish that I was talking about earlier. But what would this be? But the skin or the armor of the Leviathan is tightly sealed together, each so close to the next that no air can pass between. They are joined fast to one another. They cling together and cannot be parted. But I think these two images can give you an idea. And then what do you think this is? Yeah, actually this is the scale of the snake. So snake also had two layers, one the skin and then the scale. And then God continued to describe this creature. Its snorting throws out flashes of light, but not only light, it actually is flames from its mouth, and sparks of fire shoot out, and smoke pours from its nostrils. And it breathes, says its breath actually can set coals ablaze. So it is not just some image or some brightness that we can see, but it can actually set coals on fire, and the flames can be shoot out that God described as like that. And God continues to talk about its strength of the neck, and the fold of this flesh are tightly joined, firm and immovable. Chest is hard as rock, as millstone, and anyone who are strong and mighty will still be terrified when they see this creature. And still, God continues to describe this creature that it cannot be harmed by any weapon, not by javelin, not by iron or bronze tool, not by arrow or slingstone, and not by lance. And it has a strong underside, which are jagged pot threads. So the one creature that has this kind of underside I can find would be a turtle. So those two images are the underside of a turtle, and then there's this green color image is part of a drawing that I'll be showing you later. So still, God continues to talk about this creature and told us that this is a sea creature. Probably that's why we will not be able to find its bone, and therefore not able to know exactly how it looks like. So when it moves on water, it will leave a glistening wake behind it. One would think the deep has white hair. So I think this image depicts that kind of an image. So God declared again, nothing on earth is its equal, a creature without fear. So this creature, for us it would be so fearful, but it has no fear itself. It looked down on all that are haughty and proud and arrogant, and it is king over all that are proud. So nothing can defeat it or capture it or harm it. So with all these, what do you think this creature is? Actually, with when I saw the description about this being a sea creature, and that it will leave lines of like white hair on water when it swims, I think of this animal or creature that is known to the Chinese culture. And yeah, this is dragon boat festival, and the story of the dragon boat is actually implies that in the Chinese culture or Chinese history, they know of a creature which is called dragon, and it swims and it's so fast that it will leave the white hair like on the water, and it will breathe fire. And yeah, that green image I was showing you is one of these images. So actually, even though these days people cannot see it, but I believe this creature existed, because otherwise God will not be talking to Job, mentioning about this creature if it is something that Job would not understand. So definitely the Leviathan is a creature that existed back in the old days, and either Job had seen the Leviathan himself or at least heard about it from his ancestors. In this book of Job, God had long conversation with Job, telling him that there are so many things that we cannot understand, including his creation, all the creatures that he had created, and of course also why someone would be suffering. And in this case, it is Job who has been suffering a lot. And because God also spent a lot of time in explaining about these two creatures, the behemoth and the Leviathan, I think God is also trying to tell us about these two creatures that we may be wondering. And for me, I'm really glad that from here, these two chapters helps us to understand about dinosaurs. And for myself, I believe that it also explains the dragon in the Chinese culture that actually existed, and God had gave a detailed description to tell us. So I hope that this message can help us to really understand about God's creation and His plan, and help us to understand that He is the God of creation. He is God the Creator. So let us close today's worship using the hymn, How Great Thou Art, to think about His creation, or the universe that He had created, and give thanks to Him.